Hey there, Sooner fans. This is the OU Insider YouTube channel, and this is Quick Slants. That is Jesse Crittenden. I am Parker Thune, and every week on this video series, we bring you insight into all the compelling storylines surrounding Sooner athletics. And obviously, right now, the hottest topic across the OU athletic department is Patty Gasso and the Sooner softball program as they make an effort to bring home a third consecutive national championship, Jesse. And the natural place to start is with that climactic super regional victory over Clemson, which, all things considered in context, has to comprise one of the more memorable sporting events. And Kinsey Hansen's 3-run home run has to be one of the more memorable moments in the history of Sooner athletics, not just softball.
Yeah, no kidding. And I said this to you on the radio a couple of days ago, but it was one of those things where I was both shocked and not surprised in the slightest. It was both, and I think shocked just about how incredible that play was. I mean, facing an 0-2 count, 2 outs on the board, OU facing a 7-4 deficit. I mean, it looked like Clemson had simply beat them, and it looked like they were going to have to come back for a do or die game 3, which obviously I think you trust OU in those odds, but regardless, you want to avoid having to play with your season on the line. And you got to give you tip your cap to Clemson. I mean, they played an incredible game, but that Kinsey Hansen home run, once she did that, I think you knew the game was over, and it was so special. I mean, pick a storyline. Is it helping clinch a spot in the Women's College World Series? Is it the 48-game winning streak breaking the all-time record? Is it the final game at Marita Hines? Is it Patty Gasso's birthday? Pick a storyline. Truly, I think softball has ascended to so many eyes are on it. You saw the social media response from so many OU athletes across different sports, different generations. And I think that moment, I think a lot of OU fans, all ages, any sports fandom is going to remember that moment.
You know, it's interesting. I've talked to so many Sooner fans over the last few days about their perspective on that victory over Clemson, and especially Kinsey Hansen's 3-run homer. And the question I keep asking folks, because I'm legitimately curious to see how popular of a thought this is, but the question I keep asking folks is, how surprised were you that OU came out on top in that game in the fashion that they did? And more often than not, the answer I get is, even with Clemson up 7-4, nobody was flinching. And I think that's what's perhaps most impressive about this OU softball team, Jesse, is that regardless of how they win, you're not surprised to see them win anymore, no matter how it happens, no matter if it happens via a game-tying 3-run homer on an 0-2 count down to your final out in the 7th inning. This team just finds a way, and it never seems to be the same person that strikes the decisive blow. It never seems to be the same person that keys the victory. And there was a radio listener that I interacted with earlier this week that I thought put it very nicely, Jesse, when they said Murderer's Row isn't supposed to consist of the entire lineup. But that's the situation that Oklahoma finds themselves in here in 2023. They have so many ways of beating you. And as you look ahead to the Women's College World Series, especially given that the WCWS has always played in Oklahoma's backyard, it's tough to imagine anybody being able to dissuade the Sooners in their pursuit of a third consecutive title.
Yeah, I'd say a couple of different things. I think for one, not that this team needed, adversity necessarily. I think this team is responding to all kinds of situations, but I do think going into the World Series, I think that matchup against Clemson was really beneficial because you have to give Clemson credit they played well both games. I know OU won 9-2 that first game, but if you really watch that game, I think Clemson kind of tested them way more than they've been tested all year. And so, again, not necessarily saying that's what OU needed, but I think that's one advantage. And also, I think Clemson was way too good to be a number 16 seed. I think Clemson's one of the 8 best teams in the country, absolutely tested OU. So you look at the rest of the field. I mean, OU opens with Stanford, who, has been good in the postseason. They're 5-0 in the regional and super regional. It's, OU's first matchup. But again, I mean, you look at the field. I guess you could say nothing would necessarily be shocking. OU dropped a game to UCLA last year in the semifinal. Obviously, roared back and beat them up in the second game. But looking at the rest of the field, I mean, I think Tennessee has been a really good team all year. They're second in offense, second in defense. I think the thing that the rest of the opponents are going to have to battle, though, is that especially after that last Clemson game, it feels like this OU team, which is weird to say considering they won the last 2 championships and they're the number 1 seed. They feel like a team of destiny. That's how that Kinsey Hansen home run. That's what all that felt like. It felt really special. This team feels special, but they're not going to go into this field taking anybody lightly, and I think they learned that last weekend.
Now, you look ahead to that matchup with Stanford, and you look ahead to the field as a whole. Let me ask you, do you see Oklahoma running into any significant problems with Stanford when they take the field tomorrow afternoon at Hall of Fame Stadium? And also, if there is one team in this Women's College World Series field that you think is equipped to give the Sooners, at the very least, a run for their money somewhere down the line, who might that be?
Yeah, as far as Stanford tomorrow, again, not trying to talk down on anybody. If you make the Women's College World Series, if you get to Oklahoma City, you're a good team. But Stanford is a team that I mean, they score like 4.5 runs per game, which is, I mean, I think it's like in the 90. It's like they're ranked in the 90s nationally. I just don't think Stanford is going to be able to score enough to keep up with Oklahoma. So I mean, again, run rules are tough to come by, especially at this time of the year. But I would expect OU to handle their business on Thursday again. And not to repeat myself, but looking at the rest of the field, I do think Tennessee is a team that if Oklahoma's not careful, if they run into each other, that's my finals prediction is OU Tennessee. I think Tennessee has been really good all year. They're second in offense, they're second in defense. They profile as the second best team in the country. And I think Tennessee's not going to be scared, and I think OU has to be careful if they run into Tennessee not to overlook them. I think those are the 2 best teams. Obviously, all of that being said, I think OU obviously should be the favorite. They have the experience advantage. They have the talent advantage. They're number 1 in offense, number 1 in defense. They profile as one of the best softball teams ever. But Patty Gasso knows better than anybody. They don't win a championship every year. It's hard to win. Even though OU softball makes things look easy, it is hard to win. So I think if there's any team, I think it's Tennessee. And I think Tennessee would give them a test, but I would be pretty surprised if OU doesn't get to the end of this with a 3rd straight national championship.
Okay, last question here, Jesse. You mentioned your finals prediction is OU Tennessee, and that's where I was going. So you kind of beat me to it there. But you think it's a 2-game sweep for Oklahoma in the final series, or you think it goes the distance?
That's a good question, because you look at last year, even with OU Texas in the final. That first game was really, really close. And again, OU did drop a game to UCLA last year. So I think that's the number one thing I would say is that, if OU does drop a game, to not panic. OU is really, really good at responding. They always have been. Having said that, I think – as good as Tennessee is, and I think they will give them a test, I think OU is head and shoulders above everybody in the field. I think if those 2 teams meet, I think it's going to be a business trip for OU. I think they find a way to sweep. However, having said that, I think it's a sweep, but it would not completely shock me if Tennessee took a game. But if they do, I think OU would immediately come back and respond.
There you go. That's your Women's College World Series preview here on Quick Slants for Jesse Crittenden. I am Parker Thune as Patty Gasso and the Oklahoma Sooners pursue a 3rd consecutive national title. Make sure you stay up to date at OUinsider.com with all of Jesse's content from Oklahoma City as the field plays out and we eventually narrow things down to 2 teams. Will it be Oklahoma, Tennessee? Jesse thinks so. Let us know in the comments. Who do you think makes the final series at Hall of Fame Stadium next week? That'll be all for Quick Slants. We'll see you next time on the OU Insider YouTube channel.